Good afternoon, everyone. I just wanted to invite you to sit back for 20 minutes. We're going to have a series of chats with Champion Solutions Group. This is actually our security practice. And our vendors have really come through in the COVID-19 pandemic with some wonderful solutions for especially your remote workforce. But there's a lot of other things over the next 8 weeks that we're going to be able to bring to you. So hopefully you'll all find it educational, and in some ways, hopefully we have a little fun on the way as well. So I'm going to introduce my coworkers. First of all, I didn't even introduce myself. I'm Tammy Hope, in the security, one of the security practice leads here. And then we've got Phil Hamrick and Dan Powers. Phil, if you want to tell a little bit about what you do here at Champion, and then hand it off to Dan.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I just wanted to let everybody know that I'm Phil Hamrick, and I'm part of the security practice. I'm actually physically located in Atlanta and work very closely with our customers and developing solutions for their environment. Dan?
Hey everybody, how you doing? I hope everybody's doing good working at home. My name's Dan Powers. I work for Champion Solutions Group. I'm lucky enough to be on the team with Phil and Tammy here, and we do hope you enjoy this series as we do chats with our vendors over the next couple of weeks and provide a little bit of knowledge and some entertainment to you as well, I hope.
Thanks, Phil and Dan. You know, before we get started, everybody, it's been a serious time for all of us, but if you will stick with us over this 8-week series, you'll find out that sometimes you just have to take a break, have a little fun, and then we'll go on with today's chat. But guys, we've run into so many different situations that were kind of funny. If you don't mind, just, Dan, go ahead and share something
Folks,
that
it looks
you've
like we're having
heard
some
over the
technical
past,
difficulties. We'll get it
few
straightened
weeks,
out in a
especially
second and be
when we
right back
talk
with you.
about all of us being sent home. So what have you heard?
Well, it's kind of funny, and again, we have doing video chats a lot more, and one of the things that we did notice, I believe, is most of the male people on the other end starting to grow a little bit of hair, right? We're all going to be a little bit of mountain men. We were joking about that the other day. I obviously don't always have a beard and mustache, but a lot of us were doing that, and we realized what I joked about is on my Apple Watch, which I have been using for my rings and exercise, and it tells me to stand, make sure I'm keep moving, which everybody at home should do. And somebody joked that they actually needed a new reminder on their watch to take a shower because they thought they just have it in a few days because they haven't been getting up to go to work. So some humorous stories out there that make it a little more relatable to everybody in this situation.
So, there's just so much confusion, and people get to have a little bit of a laugh about where we are, as serious as it is. So, well, let's continue on, Phil. If you don't mind, let's go ahead and start about the program we have.
Yeah, so let me tell you a little bit about, some of the background and how we got an idea of this. No doubt about it that in February and March, our security team got involved with several clients that traditionally had employees that were in a traditional office, and a majority of the users were in this office, and they might have had 10% or so of their employees that were remote. Most of those were salespeople, but all of a sudden, we started to assist them on what would we have to change from a security perspective to begin moving more and more of those workers outside of the firewalls, outside of the on-premise environment. And so we started, moving down the path of, I think, a lot of customers, as more and more states became, started with these stay-at-home mandated policies, we started brainstorming and said, hey, what are ways that we as a security team can start helping our own customers? And so we started to try to formalize those, as well as our Microsoft practice decided that they were going to implement a Windows virtual desktop offering to our clients. So we said, hey, let's see if we can, provide some guidelines that we should highlight to our customer base.
Yeah, Yeah, and I mean, it's true. We had to do this. And just so everybody knows, one of my responsibilities is working with our partners on a daily basis. So very early on, I reached out to them, talked about what they were doing for customers and what they were seeing that was changing out there. So as we go forward, I think you'll find that these sessions will be incredibly valuable, as I talked about before. There's a lot of guidelines. There's a lot of things that they're actually allowing you to use at no cost. So at this point in time, I think let's go on and move a little bit forward. Dan, I know you've started a great I want to call it a slide, but it was a video you did that I think we really ought to talk about what we can do for the remote workforce.
Sure thing. So as most people, if I see some friendly names out there on the chat session, if you know me, I'm very, very visual, right? So we're going to borrow Tammy's chalkboard behind her and throw something up here. But one of the things that obviously appeared to me is I am one of those remote workers. So I was used to working at home, and I think Phil and Tammy as well did a lot of remote work. But the problem is, of course, now that I can't go visit clients, I'm actually stuck at home. So I've been doing these videos to help people understand what's going on. And a lot of this feedback has come from clients that called us and asked questions, right? So it was just a chat on the phone with them of what's going on. But if we really look at the one slide that we have here, you got to really understand that in most organizations, they did have a remote workforce. Let's face it, a lot of people, high-speed internet and all that, but still a good 80-90% of their folks were still working in the confines of an office or a building or so forth. So a lot of the security measures you had, whether it's just a feeling of being safe, was still contained within that building, how you set stuff up, where your servers were, your network, and all these things. And what this visual is trying to show you here is, hey, with this whole, hey, I got to work at home, it kind of flipped on its head, Tammy, is now that we have 90% of these devices now working at home, and at the end of the day, companies just weren't ready to do this. Everything from the VPN access coming back in, even how their VPN was set up, even having enough remote devices for people to go home and work. And in some clients that we talked with, they were physically packing up their desktop systems in their cubes to put in their trunk to take home. People are using it, right? They're using devices that are their personal uses and these things. And then it became an issue of, well, how do I access this? How do I do it securely, right? So obviously this is the conversations that most companies were facing at this point.
Yeah, we saw from our customer base that, that really they were moving the users to their home offices as fast as they could. As you mentioned, maybe some of them took their desktops, packed them up, and then plugged them back into their home office. And laptops were actually sent out, tablets were actually sent out. There were various ways that people were trying to actually provide access to the corporate network. But now that I think that we've talked to a number of them, they're going back and circling back to make sure that these devices are secure. So Dan, maybe you can remind us about what are some of the security implications and tools that we ought to make sure that remote users are actually implementing and utilizing to make their environment more secure.
It would be my general pleasure, Phil. So again, as you look at this, we're looking at that all these devices that have gone home. So really what we need to do is put a box around this, right? We need to treat this as a remote office, or in most cases, a lot of remote offices, right? But we got to get that same box around it and kind of clarify these devices as a single unit. So again, the first point was let people work at home. Had to do it. We all know, we've worked with clients moving to the cloud, getting more people over virtual desktops. All these things are very long processes and usually take months to complete. Most companies did this in a matter of days, right? So all the things that they were used to doing, that's patching your machines, that's, encryption on devices, making sure they're secure, all these items took a back seat to just getting their workers to work. Now that these workers are working and they're starting to overcome some of those VPN performance issues, of course they're looking at, well, oh my God, again, looking at this picture, your attack surface just grew exponentially. right? So there's a lot of things that we took for granted when we were inside the castle walls of our office, right? The firewalls, all this protection that we have. We got to make sure we continue to do this all the way to the point of how do we back up these devices? If I'm on a high-speed network in the office and I had my backup set, but now that I pushed, hundreds to 1,000 users at various network speeds, how am I even ensure that I'm backing up my devices? Where is my PMI data? How secure are these devices? Are they being patched? All of these things I used to do in the confines of my building, I now have to do to this box that we drew with all your remote workforce.
Dan, I mean, that's all great, but what about people on their home Wi-Fi now? I mean, if you think about the exposure from a security standpoint, what the heck do they do there?
Well, that's a really good point as well, Tammy, because again, you had a certain set of the workforce that were used to working remote, and they probably find some good guidelines, right? Even if they're on a public Wi-Fi, maybe they had a VPN, ensure their connections were secured, right? These people were probably a little more savvy, let's just face it. But then when you take the accounting department, the HR department, and all these other departments that, again, were used to working at home, in the office, now that I'm working at home, they simply probably attach to their home Wi-Fi systems, right? But the other thing you have to remember is there's a lot of devices in any modern home, right? You got Siri, you got Google, you got Ring doorbells, you got smart TVs, you got your kid's Xbox for that matter, right? All these devices that are now connected to your network at home, and they're particularly probably not secured. So there's a few steps that you can do. And again, if we look at this picture we're going to show up, is you're now sharing this network with all these other devices that quite honestly would probably never be allowed in most corporate environments. And again, you're expounding that on not just one or two people, but hundreds, if possibly not thousands of them.
Yeah. So, what you're saying, Dan, is, with these, devices that we've connected to our Wi-Fi's at home, things like the Ring doorbell, or, any of the Amazon or Google systems, that you've put in place to help turn on light switches, things that, are helping us with controlling our garage doors and our heating and cooling, remotely. All of those are becoming really, I think, ways that the cyber guys, bad guys, can actually break into your environment. So what are some guidelines that you can, that you've got for us to consider?
Sure thing. So you're absolutely right. And I'm laughing as you said that because I literally just hooked my garage door up to my automated system so I can see when the garage door goes up and down, and I can actually say, Alexa, shut the garage door. So it just rang true to me. But the unfortunate part as well is that with any crisis, and a great political statement is, hey, never let any good crisis go to waste, is definitely true for the bad guys as well. Unfortunately, they are taking advantage of this, as we know, whether that's phishing attacks, whether that's click here to get your stimulus check if you're in the U.S., right? So they're definitely taking advantage of this, and there's already quite a few weaknesses in these home devices. The Ring network, obviously, Alexa, Google, all of these devices. So you really want to take extra precautions here and probably separate some of these things. So for an example, if most modern routers that you have today will allow you to have multiple Wi-Fi signals, and you can split that Wi-Fi signal. So what we're suggesting here in this next slide that we're showing is that you probably also have a spouse or other people maybe at home that are also forced to work at home. Separate your work from the entertainment side of the house, your Xbox, your smart TVs, the Ring doorbell, as you had mentioned. Create two separate Wi-Fi SIDs. And once you do that, and I would do this for your home network as well, there's no reason to broadcast it. Again, I'm more that engineer geek guy. I can literally sit out. I've done it when I've gone for walks, and I use my phone and I just search Wi-Fi signals. I'm just trying to see, who's the people next door. I know they're the Browns. Honestly, not because I met them, because their Wi-Fi signal says the Browns house, right? And by the way, they're not secured, but that's another issue. But once you set up your connections, you don't have to broadcast what's called the SID, your Wi-Fi name. It's just another avenue that someone could expose to you. So again, some of the things that we had talked about there was separating the Wi-Fi, making sure you follow whatever company standards that are implemented already. For an example, you probably have to work at home with your kids. You maybe homeschool them. If you can separate into a different room, I suggest you do for your own sanity as well. But also because you don't want kids, your teenagers or young kids on your corporate machine. You just don't. If you get up to make lunch, make sure things like your screensaver, your screen lock, those things are on. And quite honestly, even at night before you go to bed, instead of leaving your machine powered on, suspend it. Put it down in suspended mode or turn it off. These are very simple things that you can do to help protect yourself. And as my martial arts instructor used to say, hey, harden the target. Right? If two people walk out of the mall late at night and one's, and again, I'm not picking on the ladies, but a woman with a purse looking for her keys, or Mike Tyson walks out, hey, the bad guys probably ain't going after Mike Tyson. He's a hardened target. I'm going for the guys that are easy to attack.
Yeah. Yeah, very good advice, Dan. And just, I know nobody else could see this, but he said the A word so many times, and I actually have one on my desk that the blue ring would fly every time he said it. So I was afraid that my garage door was going up and down at that time, but it was like, okay. But hey, guys, thanks for joining us today. We try to make these short. We try and make these informative. Hopefully you got something from it, right? And if anything, you see how goofy the three of us can be. In fact, you know, as you notice, Phil's afraid to get on video. We don't know why.
Because he's stuck up at the cabin and his watch didn't tell him to take a shower for at least 5 days.
Probably true. But hey, the last thing I want to go over is, as Dan's showing the slides here, you can see that there are multiple chats coming up. We will send all of you that attended today that PowerPoint. You can link in and register for any of those or all of those. The next up is with Extra Hop, a longtime partner of ours. We're really looking forward to sharing with you. We always have some inside scoop on what they're doing, some things that they have provided us to be able to give you something very valuable to your remote workforce and really understanding what's going back and forth in your VPN. So hopefully you can join us with that as all upcoming that you've seen now. But thank you very much, and be safe, everybody.
Yeah, we got a couple of questions here, and if you don't mind, I'll go ahead and get started. You know, if everyone can hold just 1 second, let's see. It's one question is, you didn't talk about malware or antivirus today. Why not? So Dan, do you want to take that one?
Sure. So as we mentioned, we weren't trying to push products. I'm assuming that most organizations, you probably already had, you know, whether that's Windows Defender, whether that's Carbon Black, whatever it was, that your company had already put on your machines. We're kind of assuming you still have that. But again, today's chat was really just supposed to be kind of an introduction to this and not trying to push any type of products. But we will be, you know, as we do the chats with the other vendors, we're obviously going to be toting what that vendor can offer you and your organization from a work and home environment. But again, our purpose was to get used to working at home, and what are the things that you could do above and beyond your IT staff that are doing, such as putting antivirus or something in place.
Dan, I have another one that has to do with the SID. Someone's asking, is they actually don't know how to create a SID, and could you just spend a minute or two talking about how they could do that so that they actually get the instructions?
Sure. So again, this is going to vary depending on who your provider is, what type of cable modem / router that you have. But most of the modern ones will allow you to do it. So first of all, recognize, and I meant to be a little more clear in there, is, you know, I have, for an example, like just automatic, right? It came up as 5G, 2G, and then I could enable a guest network. So of course, on the other two, the 5G, 2G, for example, I put a password on it. Of course, you want to have a password on your SID. That's the Wi-Fi signal. And the guest network, I could enable with no password. I suggest you don't do that. But again, you may have to look up, even Google it. And I hate to say that, but there's so many variations of the routers. But if you need to, or those folks that, from an organization, let's just pick Atlanta area, right? Hey, if you're in Atlanta area and a bunch of your staff had to go work at home, you're probably going to realize, hey, you probably really only have two main ISP providers. Your IT staff can help you as well. Hey, you either got Comcast or you're going to have Verizon. Their default cable box or router is going to be one of these two models. It's something that your IT staff can even help you do. Just creating the two SIDs, by the way, is going to create two networks, but they're on the same subnet. One of the advanced features that most of these routers can do is actually create a different subnet. That's really going to separate your traffic, the home traffic, and the what I call the entertainment network, if you will. And then, yeah, that can get a little more involved, but you can actually make it so those two networks don't talk to each other. That's really going to separate it out. But the other thing that I mentioned, Tammy, in there about disabling the broadcast, I think most people don't do that. And again, the point there is you're just trying to limit your exposure, so people, less chance of taking advantage of you. So again, it was all about, hey, what little things can we do in an attempt to harden the target to make yourself a little less exposed.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah, I've
Dan.
done the same.
Yeah, and I was just going to say is I'm from the Atlanta area, and of course, I use Xfinity, and they're the type of router that I have is software enabled, so that you can set up multiple SIDs. There is no additional cost for that, and it was fairly easy to do. But again, it depends on what kind of provider you have and what kind of router that you've got in your particular home. One last question, and we'll wrap it up from there. There is several questions about different providers, but let's take those one-on-one, and let's see if we can help some folks out. But the last question is saying, hey, if I'm adding a home office SID, is that enough to secure my corporate assets? So why don't you, it's sort of a broad question, but maybe you can give them a little bit of answer, and then we can fill in more details a little bit later.
Sure. So it's not enough. It's, again, these are little mitigation steps that you can do, right? One of the biggest ones, whether you even create the different SIDs or not, is to use a VPN, whether your company is providing you with VPN, or even some of the ones that you can pay for. They're not all that expensive, $20, $30 for the year, or X dollars a month. Even when you're not, trying to just protect your corporate asset, but just your home network, your home devices in general, is you can have these things that will create a VPN, which will really do more of the security. So again, we didn't jump into a lot of those very specific questions, again, around the malware, the antivirus, the VPNs, because we're going to assume different people on the line here, right? Your IT department, your corporation really should have some of that stuff set up for you. But to answer your question, Phil, no, it's not a complete way to shield yourself. Just because you created a different SID on your network and stopped broadcasting it, you shouldn't feel like, okay, I'm totally protected now. It's just a minor step in things that you can do.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Tammy, you want to just wrap it up?
Sure. Again, thanks everybody. Hopefully you learned a little something that helps you in your home office. And don't forget to join us next week with Extra Hop. And again, same format, down to 20 minutes, just to get some good info and get back to your day. So take care, everyone. Be safe.
Yeah, thank you very much. Stay healthy.
Thank you.